So I did Stanley Marketplace First Fridays last night, which was super fun. I brought these fidget ornaments. I have clicky canes, or crackly canes. Crackly canes is a better name. Fractal flakes, which are based on the Coke fractal. Hello, Coke snowflake. You have a triangle. You take each of its sides and you cut the middle third out and make it into a point. Please focus. Then you get this. This is the next level. Then you take this, you cut the middle of each of these lines out and turn them into a point. You get this, and you repeat it again. Of course, you can do that to infinity, and it makes this cool snowflake shape. So I thought it would be fun just to have that as an ornament. I don't know how I feel about this one. I think it's like not quite fidgety enough. Like you don't really know what to do with it. Like it's cool, but no one really seemed to super connect with it. And I think it needs to be more fidgety. I am exploring something more like this, where I can maybe build the fractal pattern into the rings. I think some of these are kind of promising. I'm having a lot of trouble figuring out how to make them fit into each other because of the thicknesses and stuff. It gets all very complicated, but I think there's hope there. So these will probably be replaced. These are ginger snappers. Just little ginger snap cookies that have magnets in them. Made this pattern on the back so you can kind of rest your thumb in it like a worry stone. And for some reason, when two magnets like this, there's just magnets in here just below the surface. When they snap together, there's a point when they're like close but not aligned where they actually repel. Like you can see right here, see that? They're like held at that distance. And I don't entirely know why, honestly. This is an interesting effect. But the upshot of that is that as you let them fall together, they jump apart and then snap back together. And so there's this pretty addictive little snapping effect. And it can still be quieter if you hold them together and keep them from doing that snapping. You can kind of fidget that way too. Anyway, I really like these. I designed and made them in like a day or two. They're one of my most recent ones. So I'm really happy with them. I'm excited to make more. I got some wood filament for the first time. I'm still figuring out how to get a good finish on them right now. But I think this will be the filament I use to mass produce if I can figure out the finish. Fidget flakes. Been working on these for a long time. Some little kids, their hands were too small, and this would kind of hit their webbing, which I was worried about. And so I think I should make maybe a second version, maybe because so many snowflakes are known for having different shapes. Maybe they shouldn't all be the same. I can have some shorter, fatter flaked ones. That'll be better for little hands. I also still just want these to spin better. I don't honestly know how. I've tried so many, like dozens and dozens of variations of this central core, and I'm just not quite happy with them. But I do like the boinging. The boinging is very good. Anyway, some iteration needed. These were a hit. Everybody liked them. Nobody realized you could do this until I showed them, but they liked that when I showed them. Some little boys thought it was fun to play them like puzzles, like you scramble them up, and then you see how fast you can like get them all back to the right way, which I thought was a really great idea. They went through my whole pile and organized them all that way and then stacked them, which you can still see the results of. It was very cute. Yeah, so I'm happy with these. They're really hard to print for some reason, but I'm gonna lock that in and they're pretty much ready to go. And these are the 5 that I brought. I have like dozens more ideas, which is a problem, because I really want to just make all of them. I can just talk through, I guess, real quick. So one idea is pass-through Christmas tree, which is one of these pass-through toys that has like a spiral core that kind of surprisingly fits through it. I also had this idea of putting something on the top of it that looks like it might be too wide to fit through, but because of the placement, it can fit through perfectly, so that seems like a fun thing to play with. I also want to get these guys to cut through and kind of see the holes that it leaves. I'd like that to cut through to create like the kind of patterns you see on a Christmas tree when you have streamers and lights on them. But I'm having a lot of trouble getting something that has those qualities and is fun to play with that's sturdy enough. Like these things, as they start to cut through, get really easy to break. And so I'm not quite happy with that. And I've set this idea aside probably for next year for now. I also have an idea for another kind of snowflake, which would be inspired by this origami fidget I designed a while ago. Got a broken link, which is super annoying. I should fix that somehow. This is the only prototype I made. Yeah, so it's just basically kind of like a sheet of origami paper with these joints that let you do the basic folds. So it's kind of interesting to play with. I like its properties. And I'm imagining I could do something like this in snowflake form by having it be a 6-pointed star and then cutting it into triangles like this, right? So this kind of shape. And then you leave some of these unconnected, like I've done here. You have to like leave some of the internal ones free so that you can do more interesting moves with it. I would leave these as gaps so that you still have this continuous ring around the outside. Now, if you can imagine, these are all joined together, so you have this continuous loop of hinged triangles that makes a snowflake. And then you can, you know, cut out different shapes from these guys because you're not using these edges. You just have the joints here and here. So the outer edges, you have this freedom to make some interesting patterns, and you can make different patterns on the inside. I don't think you can flip it inside out. I was kind of imagining you could flip it inside out, but I tried. I like tore up a napkin and was trying to play with it, and I don't think it's flippable because of the way that these joints would have to become the outside part of the new internal hexagon, and like the angles between them aren't right. I honestly don't totally understand what's going on there, or if it's possible to make something that is flippable. Maybe I try like a triangle. Anyway, I like this idea. This is really far from being done, so I'm also gonna put that for next year probably. I also got all of these keyboard clickers because I met these little girls who were selling 3D printed toys, and they had some that involved key clickers, which are the devices that go underneath your keys on your keyboard. And they have this really satisfying little clicky spring on them. They're kind of weird shaped on the bottom, like they're not made to be fit into things, but if you cut off these pins or leave holes for them, you can kind of seat them and stuff. Like you can make a 3D printed little hole that they sit in, and then you have to have just the right shape. It's like a circular peg with a cross cut out of it, like this. That'll accept this joint there. So anyway, I was a little bit concerned about using these for toys that kids might end up with because they are small parts and I don't want them to come out just like the magnets, but then I realized just like the magnets, I can just lock them in, I think. I haven't actually tried this yet, but here's the idea. You print with a cavity inside that's the shape of this bottom thing, and then when the print gets to that level, it'll just look like, you know, a box with a gap in it, like this. You would seat it in there, stick it inside the middle. It's a terrible drawing, but you got the idea. And then you hit go and the print keeps going and just seals it over. And so you would basically have like a little collar that snugs up to here and holds it in. So the whole thing would be like embedded in the plastic. And then you just have a separate piece that snaps on with a press fit there, if I can get that press fit good enough. And then I have to make sure that piece is big enough that it does not fit in the small part cylinder, which defines choking hazard sizes. I think the most obvious idea I have so far is like basically some kind of peppermint thing, like this, and it's got like a little gap. Hopefully it's rounded. So you know, you kind of like smush it together and it clicks. The problem with this that I'm stuck on is I currently don't have an AMS, which is a system that automatically changes colors for you. And so I'm trying to keep all of my designs to only being different colors by layer. And so for something like a gingerbread cookie, that's actually great. I just made sure when I was designing this that there is like a single plane that separates the cookie from the icing. And then I only have to change the filament once. For something that I want to be rounded, it's a problem. The easy solution is just to make it a cylinder with sharp edges like this, and then I can have my design on the top, and maybe the red part is one layer above. I think this would not be pleasant enough. Like, I want something that feels thematically like a little bonbon, and I think those need to have rounded edges. So I'm not totally sure. You know, another solution is just to have this shape and then only have the red part go up to here, have the rest of it all be white, and then the colors kind of end there, but the candy keeps going. I don't know if that would be unsatisfying. I think it would look kind of funny. Anyway, there's that. I've also thought about doing a present, which I think would be cute. You have like a little lid to the present, you know, and then you have maybe a little bow on top and some ribbons that go around like this. The problem with this is the same problem, which is that if I want this ribbon to be a different color, I can't do that. So I've been thinking a little bit about trying some different assembly stuff. I've never tried, you know, I've put in stuff like magnets. Really, I've only done this with magnets, but I put magnets into my designs by, as I said, leaving a gap, printing, pausing, putting it in, keeping on printing. You can do that with 3D printed inserts. So like each of these could actually be a panel that I print flat, and maybe I have like a little bit of a draft angle on it. And then I just print like the structure around it, this frame that's gonna hold all the panels. I pause here and I put in my little panels, and then I keep printing and it kind of seals it in. That does leave like a little bit of a frame that I can't have be different colors. I'm just not totally sure. It seems like a lot of effort. So I'm still working on something that'll just simply be a clicker. I've also had some ideas about different ways to use these, not just as like a simple up and down clicker, but maybe something like a bell, which has, I don't know what you call this thing, a ringer, I guess. You know, you could have this held in by a ball joint. This is free, this is maybe weighted even, put something in it. And then you have two little clickers here and here. And so I'm imagining as you swing this back and forth, it goes click, 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 right? So this could either be two-dimensional, like literally like this, and then I just like leave it open or print over a thin sheet, or I can make it kind of round but like ovalish, which I'm leaning towards. I think that sounds like a fun thing to hold, like sort of an ovaled round thing with this guy inside, and then the two clickers, you know, sealed within. You could also go fully round. You could have like a really three-dimensional, this is the top view, and you would have 3 different clickers facing in, and then, you know, they could have like little bumpers that surround the central swinger, and then now when the weight goes around, you'd have like 3. That sounds fun, but it seems like, you know, these things cost some money, so it's kind of annoying to have 3 in there. I think somewhere in the middle is probably where I'll go with this if I try it out. Probably like the flattened oval. I'm thinking about that. There's also obviously like nutcrackers and things that could go in that direction. I also have an idea. There's this toy I printed a long time ago that was this thing like this with like a little joystick coming out. Right. And the joystick could kind of springily move back and forth. And the way this worked is that this joystick connected to a flat spiral spring at the bottom that just like went around inside of this. And this was printed on the base plate. And then there was like a little cap that would cover it over that was printed separately. But this flat spiral spring is really interesting to me because it was really satisfying when they kind of moved around. So I'm imagining maybe you have one of those springs and you go up to, say, a little snowman like this. I don't know how I do the face colors and stuff, that might be an issue, but you'd have that, and then you'd have like, you know, the outer thing would be shaped like this to produce, maybe his head is, maybe his little hat is where you put your finger. And then it would look like this, you know, and you could bobble him around. I think that would be fun. I like this idea a lot, but never built something like this before. I would probably have to do a second piece just to hide it so that it looks nice. You could always leave the spring hanging out, but I don't love that. And if you do a second piece on the bottom here, then you need a way to combine them. And I haven't really done that before. I haven't done snap fits or screw threads, or I don't know how I do most of that stuff. I guess I know how, I can imagine snap fit, but screw threads, I don't know are within my current wheelhouse. I think what I'm gonna do for the immediate future, and especially this week until my short recreative, is figure out my display. So I've got a table, got 6 feet of room, and I already have this stand built, which takes up a good chunk of the table, but holds up a board and a sign. And for my snuggets, this has just been a whiteboard that I put the snuggets on. And the sign has been my snuggets sign. But I think I'm gonna have to print a new sign up here that's gonna say whatever the brand is. What do I want it to say? I guess I want it to say fidget ornaments or ornamental fidgets. I think I want the product, I want all these fidgets, instead of being in that Lazy Susan, which worked but was like kind of contained and people didn't want to mess it up and they'd have to worry about where to put them back and stuff. It just wasn't a great display. I want them out on the board. So maybe I will have little hooks that I print. I can print some kind of like magnetic holders. I'm curious if my current magnets will be strong enough for that. It's worth trying. Let's say I have these little holders all around. I have some things like that right now in my tool board, this kind of thing. Okay, it's good to know. It has to be a little smaller than this, but this is pretty robust. So I think I can take this down a little in scale, make something like it that has a magnet in the back somehow, and then plunk those on my display board. And then I'm thinking I would also have maybe like little sheets next to them with information. I feel like I like drawing about my designs, and I've thought about them a lot, so there's interesting things to point out that I want to share with people. Usually I'm like waiting for them to show interest in the mechanism, you know, if they're like, oh, look at this, then I have something to tell them about, but I'd rather them kind of be able to explore that themselves without me having to be ready to supply it. So what if each of these little sheets has like say it's this guy, it'd be like, here's the name of it, it's a fidget flake. And maybe there's a little diagram of it. These things are hard to draw. A lot of little boingy bits. Anyway, a little diagram of it. And then maybe there's like little blowout details where it's like, here's how you make a spring out of PLA. You use sections of a circle combined with at least 1 millimeter strokes. And here's how you do a rotating center. The side view of it has this kind of thing going on. Anyway, I think these would be super fun to make. Maybe I even draw them by hand. And these could go on the board next to them. And that kind of leans into like the science-y STEM inventor vibe, which I think would be popular with my clientele, particularly the parents. But you know, there's truth to it. I have thought about all these things, and I think it'd be fun to share them. So I do that kind of thing. I put these up, and then here's my little ginger baby. Okay. And then up here, I guess, I don't know, do I need a logo for this? This is a sub-brand. Snuggets has the shell. What are my ornamental fidgets? Maybe I got a logo. I don't know if that matters. The main thing, actually, what I probably want up there is try us, because the main problem I have is people are worried about me being mad at them for touching my fidget toys, which of course I want you to fidget with them, that's the whole point, you know, but people are used to store environments and interactions at markets like this being a little bit more precious, and they don't want to like mess up the display and stuff. So I need to make like an intentionally messy display that people are comfortable interacting with. And that's part of what I'm trying to design into this. So we have ornamental fidgets, try us, maybe there's a logo, question mark. And then here I need these little hooks with magnets. And I was also thinking, if I'm gonna have like papers kind of tacked to the board like that, maybe I make little magnets like this. Maybe I have a series, because I still want there to be some Snuggets presence. I've been thinking about like, do I want to still bring the Snuggets at all? Like, I think it's nice to just show like a unified front of what I'm doing. But anyway, maybe I could even just do a single magnet design. I've thought about this one before, so I already know what it would look like. It's a tree like this, and as you can see, it tessellates. The trickiest part is that the trunk has to be as wide as the foliage bottoms, which I don't love. but I can think about that. There's also, this is where the tip of the tree comes in. So if I were to like broaden the tip somehow, like if that still looked like a nice tree, which maybe it could if I design it properly, that could help with this problem, I think. Anyway, I can definitely make a tree of some kind into a snugget, and that could be a cute way to keep snuggets there. Maybe I have like a little corner where all the trees are tessellating, and people might ask about that and learn about the snuggets. And otherwise, the trees are holding down my little scratch sheets. I have also thought about how if this becomes, you know how snuggets have like the wave pattern that unifies everything, this would be kind of a square wave pattern, which could be a fun basis for another whole family of magnets. So I could, for example, do a present, and it's just a square, but you know, it fits into this pattern. I could try to find some way to like make the bows interact with each other in an interesting way to like make it more of an interesting tessellation, but whatever, for a first pass, you know, they're squares and that's cool, they fit together. Go with the trees. That's also possible, but try to focus on the marketing. So I have this, I have what I brought to my show at Stanley is this little mini tree that my cousin lent me. I actually did not ask her if I could use it for this, so apologies, Charlotte. But I assumed it would be okay. I just brought it and put some of the little ornaments on it as like an example. You know, you can put it on your tree. And I'm not sure what else to put over here. I could just like have the fidgets out. I think I like just like having some on the table, you know, so that people can come and pick them up. I notice when there's one place that people can engage, when the best thing happens, which is that a small crowd starts to form, that starts with one person engaging and somebody else seeing, oh, they're engaging with something, like I want to go see what that is. But if there's only one spot, then they can't. And that's a really critical inflection point for like sales interactions, I think. And so I want to have a second place where somebody can come alongside and be like, oh, I'll just grab one over here and wait until the board is free. And that'll kind of hopefully keep it friendly for a small group of people to interact with instead of just one person at a time. So maybe I just have them loose over here. Another idea I had though was, this is kind of like as a gamification of my feedback, I can have like, I don't know, clear tubes or something with each one having a different toy hanging on it. And then people can vote for their favorites. Like you put like a little bean in or something. I don't know if people would want to do that, but I think that could be fun and an interesting way for me to get feedback. Another kind of thing I could do over here would be like a wheel. People love spinning wheels. That is fun, and I agree. So you have little, I don't know, pie sections. I'm not sure what would be on the wheel. Like, I mean, the obvious thing is like, you get a free fidget, and I'm fine with that. Maybe if that's like a 10% chance, I can definitely afford that with my profit margins, and that sounds like a fun way to get people who want a fidget toy to own one. That's just generally a pro. But you know, maybe that's like one of them. What are the rest? Maybe there's like a spin again. Maybe there's 2 of those. That gives me 3. I want to have at least like 10 so that I have that 10%. So I still need 7 more. Maybe you get like a free stocking. I have these little mini stockings I bought that I didn't actually use at Stanley, but I was thinking of using them. They're like this big, maybe 7 inches, 5 inches. I was thinking about using them as packages for like bundle deals. So maybe you get a free stocking on some of them. And oh yeah, maybe if I make the magnets, maybe you get a free magnet. And there's, you know, it's actually more fun than the stocking probably. Anyway, that's an idea. I've never made one of those. I imagine it's not that complicated, but I'd have to figure all that out. So that's kind of work, whereas this could just be like mason jars and beans, basically. So I have to think about how much time I want to devote to whatever's going on over there. But I think my priority is making this big sign and developing these hooks, and then working on whatever I have for the art of these little scratch pages. But I think I like the setup. I like the vibe of it. It feels like playful and interactive and like a work in progress, which it is. And yeah, I guess that's what I'll be working on this week. So I'll stop it there. Thank you for listening to me ramble if you're still here. And enjoy the rest of your weekend.